Morning, everybody. Thanks for joining us. We are on our second day of the key industry benchmarks, or your salon scorecard, benchmarking your way to success. So day 2, we are here with Cindi from Katherine Drew Salon. Good morning, Cindi. Thanks for joining.
Of course. Looking forward to it.
We'll give just a couple more seconds, let some other people come joining in as they are getting ready this morning. As a reminder, we do have a Q&A box down below on your box here. So if you have any questions as we're going through today, you can drop it into the Q&A and we'll make sure we try to get to any questions that you might have. The session is being recorded, so you will get a copy of the recording after the session ends. And if you joined us yesterday, we had a really great conversation. Cindi, I know you weren't able to watch it, but it was with Stefan from Apotheca Salon and Barbershop, and he's in Austin, Texas. And I'm going to share my screen here in just a second, and I'll show you some of the metrics that we talked about yesterday and some of the ones that we're talking about today. Just to recap that, we talked about some of his great best practices that he has, that he's having a lot of success with, and his practices were using a lot of his SEO and Google Analytics and the promotions and the additional services that he's offering. And I know we're going to talk about some of the things that you're doing really well and that are successful for you and your salon today. So we'll get through that in just one second. Let me go ahead and share my screen. So anybody that watched yesterday, or if you are joining for the first time, these are 3 metrics that we discussed yesterday. And again, these numbers are coming from what's called the KIM report, or the Key Industry Metric Report, that we are contributing into along with other salon software and point of sale companies. And this report is generated and produced by Salon Interactive. And so 3 of these that we discussed yesterday were the average revenue per salon, average products sold, and average number of clients. And so these numbers that you're looking at were for February, and you can see the range is broken down by the number of service providers that you have in your business. So again, take a screenshot, take a look at these, go back and look at your own reports, and you're able to see kind of where you fall compared to the industry average today for your size of salon. And then you'll see on the far right-hand side of each of these graphs, it's a positive or a negative number, and that's up or down from last month. So what's really great about these reports is that they're pretty real-time numbers. So these are February numbers, and shortly we'll be able to get March out now that March is completed. But taking a look at sort of where you fall within range of the industry average. So for a 10 to 19 service provider salon, the average revenue is almost $60,000. And for average number of products sold of 10 to 19 service provider salon is 171 products. It was the only that one and the 20 plus service provider salon are the only 2 that were increased over last month. The rest were down just a little bit. And then the average number of clients for a salon of 10 to 19 providers is 449 clients, and everybody saw a little bit of a decrease in February from the month prior. But Cindi, we were just talking about this too, and keep in mind February is a shorter month than January, so we had a little bit of a shorter day. Then today, what we're looking at is 2 new metrics for you to consider: is the average number of color services and your average service ticket. And so Cindi, in your salon, you fall into the range of a 5 to 9 service provider salon, and the average number of color services is 139, or rounded up to 140 color services per month. And this was for February, which was an increase over January. And then for our average service ticket for a 5 to 9 service provider salon is $102, we'll round that up, and was definitely an increase over January. So everybody had an increase in average service ticket February over January, which is really great to see. Right. So Cindi, for your specifically number of average color services, and this is what we're gonna really have a conversation around today because your color services were up 12% over the average in here. And so when you and I were talking, I'm going to pull the screen down. So if anybody is watching, wants to take a screenshot of this to see it later, go ahead and do that before I pull it down. I'll give you a second. All right, I'm going to stop sharing that. And again, this is recording, so you'll be able to get it out in the recording as well. But Cindi, we were talking about color services and sort of like, what does that look like in your salon? But before we get to that, I want to give a chance for you to introduce yourself to our audience. I know you've been on a couple webinars in the past, and we're a part of our Rosy Cabinet of Thought Leaders last year. So glad to have you back. But do you want to introduce yourself and give everybody an introduction to your salon for a second?
Sure, I'd be happy to. Thank you for having me on. It's funny, I love being called on to some of these. I always worry that it's going to be a technical webinar, but Lori has gotten to know me well enough. I came to salon ownership from a very different path than a lot of you, in that I have never been a stylist. I retired from the corporate world in 2018 and was looking for something to do that was going to carry me through the next 10, 15, 20 years. And I had always wanted to be in the beauty industry. But back at the time when I was growing up, going to beauty school, according to my parents, was not going to cut it. I had to go to business school first, because if I was going to own a business and be a beauty provider, I better know how to run the business. So I ended up going to business school. I loved it, fell in love with business. And I spent the next 30 years in corporate business with a background in finance and management. So when the opportunity came to purchase the salon, which is ironically the salon that I have been going to since 1989, I jumped on it. And one of the first things that I did, and so this would have been January of 2019, so we all know what happened in 2020. And luckily for me, I took over a very profitable, large salon. So I had a little bit of cushion. What I really needed to do was look through a different lens and reevaluate this salon through the eyes of a business. So an accountant, if you will, look at the income versus the expenses, look at where we could increase our either income or efficiency, and that's something I can come back to, or decrease either our expenses or our waste or our ability to make mistakes, because mistakes cost time and or money. So that's really what I did the first 6 months. I was deer in the headlights. I was just trying to figure out what was going on. And lucky for me, everybody stuck around. The second 6 months is when I started to dig in and look at numbers. And that's when I had a minor walkout, which is a whole nother story. We came through COVID. A lot of it had to do with the help that I did get through. Rosy was part of that, and a couple of other groups that were really working to support salon owners through COVID. And I worked really hard at elevating the image of our salon so that whatever few people were out there post-COVID looking to go back to a salon, that they would choose us first. And being that I had a marketing background as well, we have earned some awards that I'm very proud of, because we are a relatively small salon. I would say, Lori, right, when you show those screens of sizes, yeah. And we're in a smaller town. We're in Livonia, Michigan. And from an image standpoint, though, we have a big image. So I work really hard at being sure that we're at top in Google. We've won a couple of big awards, Best of Our Detroit, and a new one that we just found out about, which is the Salon Today 200. But all of that is with the help of my vendors and the businesses that I partner with, of course, one of which is Lori, a couple of others that we'll talk about. But so from a management standpoint and an ownership standpoint, that's kind of where I am. My job in the salon is to market for my stylists, support them however they may need. I am 3/4 of the way through my apprenticeship, so I can do hands-on and help them with their guests if they need it. I do take on new stylists, and I really commit to helping them build their business by my marketing. I can get them in the salon, and then we work really hard to get them back for the third time. So that's, well, and I'm the chief janitor. So other than those,
Maintenance
yeah,
and janitorial service.
yeah.
I appreciate you being transparent about what you said a few minutes ago, though, about when your second 6 months of being able to really start digging into the numbers and having a minor walkout. Like, of course, in the moment, I'm sure you were like panicking.
Oh,
But also, I'm sure 90% of salon owners that are watching have gone through or experienced something like that. But what I can appreciate about that is that you actually got into those numbers and you do have that financial background. So naturally, you're going to look through those things. But it was almost coming to a realization of what, like that wake up moment of like what's happening here. And that, created the reaction that it did with certain people that maybe were not the right fit for your business.
exactly. And who potentially weren't doing the right thing for
Mhm.
or for their guests. And that's what digging into the numbers really did. It really revealed some of that.
The
So,
other thing that you said too that I love is that you're doing an apprenticeship so you can help in the salon.
yeah, I want to be able to help the guests or the stylists if they get behind.
I
And
love
I want,
that.
yeah, and I think it's important for them to see that I really care about what they're doing.
Yeah.
So I'm doing what I can, and it gives them an opportunity to teach me, which I think
Yeah.
is really important for them too. I think for some of them, depending on what their mentality is with, I call them teammates, but they call me their boss. It evens the playing field a little more, and it gives them a little more confidence when they interact with me because it's very clear there's an area where they know more than I do.
When you came in, you bought an investment business,
Yes.
right, for your next 10, 15, 20, however many years.
Yep.
But you're very invested in it to the point where like you're actually getting hands on. You didn't just buy it and you're going to manage it or whatever and walk away from it. You're not blindly owning it. Like you're actually, and I think that contributes a lot to why you kept a lot of the team that you did when you bought the business. Would you agree?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And again, I think it gave them an opportunity. They didn't have to be afraid of me because of my business knowledge, because they could now know there was a very specific area where they were much more qualified than I was. And I think it gave them the confidence in interacting with me.
Mm-hmm. Okay, can we talk about coaching and like because you had that, you started digging into the numbers, you started realizing some things. Do you coach your team today? Like, are you coaching everybody, or are you are you reviewing numbers in business with everybody? What does that look like?
Sure. So in a couple of different ways, we have a weekly huddle, which I know for some people it probably sounds like a lot of work. It's I do a weekly scorecard, and it's my the salon, I should say, top 5 key indicators that I like to see. And I update the scorecard for each stylist every week. And then based on their schedule, it usually takes 2 meetings a week. So one group on one day at a certain time and one group on another day at a certain time. And we do it in under 15 minutes. You talk about what last week's numbers looked like and anything you want to highlight. We look forward into the coming week. What are you going to focus on? Which of the key performance indicators are you focusing on? And what obstacle might you have in accomplishing that goal that you're working toward? And it just brings awareness for their teammates to kind of see if one of your teammates maybe is looking to up their retail service. Maybe another service provider could be mentioning a product or come over to their station and borrow a product and say, oh my gosh, I love this. It just helps them be aware of what potential dips or potential issues their teammates might have. And it also gives them the opportunity to share with their teammates what they feel good about.
Mm-hmm. That's one common denominator between Stefan, who we talked to yesterday, yourself, and Joe from Trio Salon, who we're talking to tomorrow. You guys all have that similarity where this is a very successful thing for all of you guys, where you're sharing in the team. It's holding people accountable. It's bringing the awareness, like you just said, to like what people are doing, what people are using. And I think that is something that is working. So if people are taking notes, write that one down. That's a good one.
It seems to, yeah. And then we do quarterly reviews that are just one-on-ones. And, I have my team, I can kind of look at in 3 parts. I have newer stylists, then I have my not middle of their career, but still on the uprise, if you will, stylists. And then I have 3 that are kind of in not the end of their career, but they are not necessarily all taking new clients. Their schedule is much more confined. They go in Michigan, we go up north a lot, and they don't work weekends. They work a Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday schedule. So my time with them is different. It's not planning on how are they going to kill their numbers. It's how are they maintaining, how are they working in introducing some of the newer stylists to their guests so that when they do take extra time off or when they do go down to 2 days a week, they have started to integrate the newer stylists into their guests. So those are the individual meetings. And then I also do quarterly team meetings where I have somebody either come in or we have a trainer, or we do I'll have somebody come in on a Zoom and maybe do a special type of training for them. So yeah, we do a couple of different things in terms of coaching.
Seeing these numbers and that what I just showed up, and you didn't see it much sooner than anybody else that was watching today, because this report is new that Salon Interactive is putting out. What do you think of the availability of having these numbers available to you to see how you measure up compared to the average of the industry? Because these haven't been available. Like, everybody has the reports in their software. Great. Everybody can see what they're doing year over year, month over month, but not in comparison to other salons of your size. How is this, like, how do you envision that you'll be able to use this for your business in the future or going forward, or coaching your team, or like what is the benefit for you?
Sure. Yeah, I'd say there's a couple. The first is it kind of gets me out of my own head. We all have, tunnel vision because we only know what goes on in our own salons. And we can spend all kinds of time, digging through the Facebook groups or throwing the question out there to our industry leaders or to someone like Rosy. But until we can actually get information about what's going on everywhere else, we really have no idea how we stack up. And it was really exciting to me to see these numbers, to see that, yeah, we're in there, we're hanging in like everybody else. I think we can all probably agree that, January and February were tough months, after the election, the winter, again, we're in Michigan, so we have a lot of the snowbirds that leave our area. And it was a little tougher than average, I think, more psychologically and because of the weather. So seeing the numbers, it gave us a little bit more, I guess, excitement around the fact that we're keeping up with the Joneses, if you will. Mm-hmm. The other thing is it gives us something to strive for. So if I see that we're down or that we're just maybe only up a little, I can go talk to the team and say, hey guys, do we want to be average? You tell me. So yeah, it gives me a lot of opportunity, and hopefully maybe eventually some of the salons that are inputting this information, they may be willing to share some of the things that they're doing. I don't consider hardly any salons, unless they're within a block of me, competition. I think that they're all other people that we can learn from. And I'd love to talk to someone who's doing better than I am on the West Coast or the East Coast, or heck, even someone in my area, if I could get some ideas.
Yeah. And you mentioned the Facebook groups, which I see all of those too. And everybody's the challenge with that, like, they're good, but they're also not at the same time, because people will go in and they'll share something in an emotional or a reactive state. Yeah. Like they had a bad day and all of a sudden their world is falling apart, right? Or like it's a bad month and it's like they're going out of business. Yeah. So it's a very emotional state, whether it's high or low. And this is very cut and dry, and it's an average across. And Jacqueline asked a question: is this going to be, are these numbers going to be grouped by state in the future? And Cindi and I were just talking about that before we joined, is that it's something that we hope to be able to see in the future, but today it is not by the state, it's only by service provider size of salon. So we hope to see that in the future. But you're right, being able to see things like Facebook groups or going to events and talking about that is, it's an opinion or it's whatnot, or it's a feeling, but these are, yeah, these are very real numbers, and these are, actually where you're at. So I think what you're saying is, in your coaching or in your team meetings, it's not an opinion of what Cindi wants for her business to grow. It's like, here's what the average industry is doing and where we're at, either high or low, and what are we striving to do to be better as a salon company. I think it just helps with those conversations.
Absolutely. And it helps the stylist see very objectively. We're not having to cut through, as you said, the emotions, the fluff. It's very objective. And
Mhm.
it's always better, in my opinion, to be able to coach or have a conversation where you take the subjectivity out of it. Oh, she likes me. Oh, she doesn't like me. She's having a bad day. She didn't get enough sleep.
Mhm.
To me, it just makes it's more efficient because it's right there.
Mhm.
And we can talk around it, to it, we can coach to it, we can get ideas. So yeah, having it with no BS is fabulous.
Mhm. All right, I want to get into sort of the juice of what you're doing, because we had a really great conversation last week or 2 weeks ago about sort of like what's contributing to the success in your salon. And we talked a lot about the experience and your training and your services and all that kind of thing. So where do we want to start? There's one thing that stands out
Okay.
definitely is last month we know was a short month. It was February, right? We have a shorter month. So that's one thing. But when you said to me, oh, by the way, we're also closed on Thursdays,
Yeah,
I was like, oh, wow. Okay. So, like, not only are you excelling in some of these areas, you're also working a shorter week than an average salon, also. So, do you want to just expand on that a little bit?
sure. Again, it was numbers based. I started looking back at, well, I was looking at my payroll and seeing that my front desk support number to my revenue income was high. So the best way to take care of that is either decrease your front desk support, right? Or get more, get your stylist to up. Well, January and February are tough months. So I talked to everybody and they weren't getting very full days either. And I looked back probably over 4 years. This is the second year we've done it. And the slowest day on the books was Thursdays for whatever reason. People, they front load Tuesdays. We do work Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday, Saturday. So we're closed the traditional Sunday, Monday. It just didn't make any sense. The stylists were coming in and getting one or two guests, and we try as we might, we just couldn't get it to fill up. So I just made the decision. And a few people kind of at first didn't handle it very well. But when I explained to them why we were doing it, and my other comment to them was, and the longtime guests of the stylists that I mentioned to you that don't work the weekends, this gave them a longer weekend. And so they are the ones that have the more consistent clients. And I would say, look, Lynn has earned the time off. And so Thursday, we're just not busy enough on Thursday to have our stylists sitting around. It's just not fair to them. So we close on Thursdays, January and February. In March, we don't open until noon. The salon normally opens between 9:30 and 10. In April, I'm going to see how it looks. I got to compare back. Oh, it's April 1st. I got to get on it. I better get on it. So
Yeah.
actually, I think I do have it marked off until noon through the month of April. But yeah, it didn't make sense when I looked at my numbers on how much it costs to heat the salon, how much it costs for electricity, front desk support, all the other numbers that it takes to run a salon. I have it broken down, by day and by hour of what it costs to run the salon. It just didn't make sense for us. So that's how we did it.
Mhm. And I think that's something for other people to maybe look at their business, and just having the awareness around like what days are your most productive days, right? And sometimes that challenge can be solved by rearranging the schedule and putting certain people
Sure.
on certain days to fill that. And maybe in cases like yours, it just doesn't need to work out that way. Maybe you can fill the other days better than what you can fill this one, and just eliminate that entire day. And like you said, you're not closed that day year round. It's the first part of the year. And then
Right.
you evaluated to build it back in and build it back up.
Yeah.
So that was a really good call. One of the other things that we talked about also was your services. So you're seeing, and this is something that we discovered also by kind of digging into these numbers, is you're seeing your clients more often. So like an average service, would you say, is like 6 to 8 weeks people are coming back in? But for you, they're coming in one additional service in between a majority of your clients. Like you, for February, 90% of your clients that you saw were repeat guests, right? So you're seeing the same number, same customers over and over again. You're getting a lot of repeat clients back in, which is amazing. How are you getting your clients back in and seeing an extra service in between?
Sure. So there's a couple reasons for this. Again, going back to the fact that I came from corporate, the best way to decrease human error or make any mistakes is to have procedures and policies around things. So one of the biggest ones we have is a script, if you will, and it doesn't need to sound so draconian, but we have a script at the front desk, and the front desk person leads with, oh, did you enjoy your service? How did you enjoy it? You know, did you enjoy the shampoo chair? Oh, your hair looks great. It's a conversation or a compliment. That's number one. Number two is, and this is, I think, the key. How far out do you typically book your next appointment? So it's not, can I book your appointment? It's not, do you want me to book your appointment? It's because that's a yes or a no, right? It's the conversation. How far out do you normally like to book? How far out do you go for your highlights? Did Danny talk to you about a toner to brighten up those highlights in between your appointments? So you're actually not starting the conversation, but you're continuing the conversation that the stylist had. And backing up to the service time, the stylist is talking, it starts with the consultation about maintaining. That's one of the questions you always ask, you know, what is your maintenance routine with your hair color? How often do you like to come in? You know, what are your products that you use at home? But then creating a story around that. And during the conversation, or rather the service, they're talking about, hey, the next time you come in, I'm thinking we might want to pop in a couple of highlights. What do you think? Or spring is coming. Have you thought about any changes you'd like to make on your next visit? So there is an assumptive close there that they're already making their next appointment because the stylist is doing this very active integration of bringing them into the conversation. And again, it's not the yes or the no, it's more the how. So, you know, again, I use spring because that's where we are, or Easter. The conversation the last 2 weeks was, hey, you normally come every 6 to 8 weeks, but Easter's in 5 weeks. You know, if you want to get brightened up right before Easter, when you get to the front desk, make sure you talk to them about the week before or the week of. So it's already in their head. And that's a process, if you will, that the stylist has, but then it's reinforced at the front desk when the second question or comment is, how far out do you normally book? Or with some of the stylists, we know that they have already talked to them. How far out did Danny say before he'd like to see you again? So it's just a continuation and it's very consistent. We train around it all the time. It's written at the front desk. And oftentimes the comment around budget comes up, as we all know, in a consultation. The stylist, as well as the front desk, will always offer a deep conditioning treatment or a shine balm, if you will, which is just a glossing service in between appointments. Hey, I know you like to stretch your appointments out. I know you like to do big appointments twice in a season, in the middle. So we're always talking about little services that will bring them in between their 6 to 8 weeks. So I think those are probably the 3 biggest ways, Lori, that we find a way to get a stylist, or rather a guest, back in one time in between their longer service time.
Which is very important because you think of anybody's day-to-day life, they probably drive by, walk by 10 salons in a day without even knowing about it, right? So for you to be able to keep your business on top of their mind, or to be able to come in between some of those bigger services instead of going 4 months without seeing or hearing from the salon at all, they're coming back in and they're getting that experience every time that they do.
Yeah, for sure. And if there isn't any holidays coming up, one of the backup questions, if you will, that the stylist is supposed to bring up is, hey, if between now and the next time I see you, if you have any events coming up, any big dinner parties or whatever, why don't you get booked in for a blowout? We'd love to send you out with, red carpet hair. And it's, if we have newer stylists, they'll do it for $20, $25. If it's an experienced stylist or they want to go back to their own, $40. I mean, you can always get somebody to come back in for, you know, a wash and a nice blowout that lasts 2 or 3 days. So that's another way. And maybe then we get them scheduled in for a deep conditioning. Maybe then they go home with a retail, but just getting them in the salon another time for under $40
It's a
is,
way to integrate yourself, your business into their life.
yep, absolutely. And giving them a reason to do it. Hey, if you're going to go out with some friends, book club, whatever it is, you know, come up with a reason. If you have anything coming up in the next 3 or 4 weeks, give us a call. We do great blowouts. We could get you scheduled in. And if I'm tied up, you can see Rebecca, you know?
Another thing that I know you guys are doing when you're talking about pre-booking future appointments, besides just holidays, but you back up the days, right? So
Yes.
like it's 6 weeks, if it's on a Friday, you try to get them in on that Monday or Tuesday versus that following week, right? So that's another, because we're kind of talking about number of services per, you know, in the year. So an average client might come in 3, maybe 4 times a year for cut, color, whatever. But if you're able to get like one extra service out of each client in the year, the amount of revenue that can contribute to is substantial for every client that you have. So explain how your logic is around how this works for you.
It's funny. It seems so petty, but it works. So it usually, so any day other than Tuesday, because Tuesday's the beginning of the week. Let's say you're on a Thursday and the guest comes up to you and you say to them, you know, oh, did you enjoy the massage chair? Absolutely, it was wonderful. Great. How far out do you normally book your toners? Oh, 4 weeks. So then what we do, 4 weeks is going to be on a Thursday, right? Exactly. So then what I do is I go to the beginning of that week and I just say, oh, 4 weeks from today is the week of April 15th. He has Tuesday at 3, Wednesday at 4. Do either of those work for you? And right then, right there, you already gained 2 days sooner. And then the next time they come in, you're doing it again. But I always start with the beginning of that week. So, you know, it depends. If it's a Friday or a Saturday client, you're getting them in 3 or 4 days sooner. And in 2 appointments, that's a week. And in 4 appointments, that's 2 weeks sooner. So that's how you end up getting the extra visit.
Which you're right, it seems very small, but if you can get that for every client that comes in, and if they come in 3 or 4 times a year, you're getting them in 1 or even 2 weeks earlier sometimes, and you're capturing that revenue just really big.
And it's funny, when I first introduced it to my staff in the front desk, they kind of rolled their eyes like, oh God, here's Cindi with another one of her, you know, numbers things. But then I broke it down for them and showed them the revenue difference it can make for them. And all of a sudden they were like, oh, okay, I get it.
I'm glad that you said that about explaining the sum, because that's something that I think is very common. We hear all the time that like, oh, I'm not a salesperson. I'm not salesy. I don't want to do this because it's too salesy. I don't want to sell products because I don't want to push things on my clients and make them feel uncomfortable or what have you, right? But regardless, all of these are all sales skills. These really are all sales skills. And so how do you implement these to your team to help them understand that these small touches are, it can also help to improve the experience of your client because you care and you want to get them back in and you want them to be your customer again, right? So you're showing that. But also it's helping them to drive more revenue and more money for them as the service provider. So how do you relate those two of like, these are sales skills, but these are also, this is how it benefits you. What does that message look like?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's hard. I always have to be really careful because the word sales scares people. And it's funny because I spent 30 years in the corporate world, and I was proud to say I was in sales. But if you're not in sales, it almost is a taboo word. So I guess probably the first thing I do is I remind them that it's an interpersonal skill that they're reconnecting with their client again. So, and it comes across, or it's true, you are caring about your client. You know, if you've got anything coming up that's important, come and get a blowout. You know, you'll feel great, you'll look great. The warm feeling that the client gets from that suggestion, even if they don't do it the first time, maybe they'll do it the second time, you're endearing yourself to them, and they really like that. Secondly, and I mentioned it at a high level, but I broke it down for them. And I said, you know, if you have 5 clients in a day, and you get one of them to come back for a blowout, 1 a day, okay? You work 4 days, $40 a blowout. times 4 days is 160 extra dollars that week, plus the tips. I mean, I'm just talking service dollars, times 4 weeks a month, that's $640. And all you did was offer a blowout. I mean, so when I do it like that for the team, they see the dollar amount. And then as I said, the side part is, hey, and on top of that, don't forget there's the tip amount that you can count on for that. So breaking it down for them to motivate them financially is certainly one way, but the other one is it's securing their relationship with their guest, because they'll come in and tell you why they're getting a blowout. Oh, I'm going to go see a high school friend. I haven't seen her in 20 years. And, the next time they come in, we've written a note in their file, because at the front desk, oh, where are you going with your blowout today? I'm going to see an old high school friend. We put that note in their file so we can talk about it the next time. So then there's this interpersonal connection. And if they do consider, it's a lot harder to leave a salon where you're friends as opposed to leaving a salon where you just go in and get your hair cut and nobody knows you. We like to use the cheers term where everybody knows your name.
Yeah, totally. You make them feel like you are their place.
Absolutely.
And that you remembered them, even though maybe you didn't, and you looked it up on their notes before they came in, but still as a client, I feel like you remembered the entire conversation that we had.
Exactly. And I use the notes in Rosy, and I always use view profile, and I try and put it under check in. So when they come in, you can, the front desk can say, oh, the last time you were at your grandson's high school graduation. How did that go? And they look at you, and, but I use the client note section in Rosy, and I will look it back over on a Wednesday. And if I haven't seen any notes, I'll ping the front desk and say, hey guys, you must not be talking to anybody as they come in or leave, because I don't see any client notes that were added this week. So it's a good way to keep us integrated into their lives, into the guest lives.
Yeah. Are there any other best practices like this? These are really great. So you're closing on Thursdays, evaluating the business. Are there other best practices that you have that you think are contributing to your guest count, the number of visits that they're having, the color services that you're doing?
I was just looking at my notes because you were giving me, when we talked about this before, it's funny, you pulled out some things that I actually hadn't really noticed, but probably the biggest, and I mentioned it might have been very casually, is the in-between come in for a shine bomb or come in for a deep conditioning. So this is something that I instituted only 2 weeks ago. I told every stylist they can offer free deep conditioning, free. And all they're going to do is take the any back bar appropriate conditioner, put it on their stylist's head with a cap, maybe a warm towel, or put them under the dryer, and do it for the guest during a service for free. So it's either a guest that you see routinely that you want to just say, hey, you've been great to me. I'd love to do a little something special for you. It's free. Or it's for the newer stylist to get guests in. Hey, we'd love to have you in. We'll give you a free deep conditioning treatment. And for the younger ones who aren't as busy, I don't mean younger by age, younger by experience. They do not have to charge them for the blowout. The entire deep conditioning and blowout can be free. So,
and this is in between their service. So it's not during original service. It's rebook to get back in for this free service.
For the newer stylists, it's to get clients, number one, and two, to get them back in between. Yes. For the more experienced stylists, or the ones that are more fully booked, it's as a thank you. Maybe you do it, you talk to them after the highlight service. You say, hey, come on in, and I want to give you a deep conditioning treatment before your next appointment. And then when they call to book it, we're always asking them, would you like a blowout with that? Would you like, a shine bomb with that? So we do ask at the front desk. We do, once a client calls to book, we are asking them for an add-on service. So that's another pretty consistent.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you too, because you mentioned having some scripts and things at the checkout.
Yeah.
Which I think is really great. I also think that people are resistant to some of that at first, right? Because they have to get used to it. And I know you said that sometimes after they sort of get it done, they can use some of their own language, like they can make it for themselves, but they have to get to the certain points of, when to rebook, how to say those things, no yes or no questions, the assumptive sale, if you will.
Yeah.
All of their scripts that you have when people are calling to inquire about services or calling to book their service to get them to book more than what they're actually calling for.
Yeah, I just have a cute little, it's almost like a menu of all of our services. And I went to like the teacher store and got a big sticker with a star on it, and it's gold. And it says, don't forget, and it's taped right up by where they answer the phone. And it's, don't forget to ask about a service, and they can pick one, and you can say, would you have an extra 15 minutes to do a botanical repair? It's only $20. So we've got the time, the name of the service with a short description, and then the price. And maybe they don't say the price. Would you like to book an extra deep conditioning? It's a 15-minute service called the botanical repair. I would say less than half of the time people ask the price.
Because a lot of times it's not about the price, it's about, do they have the time to do it?
Right. Do they have the time? And then when you're booking them, you're taking an extra minute to ask. And I don't know if you've ever had it happen to you, but they ask, and I'll try that. Sounds great. You tell me a little bit about it. And then you hear it and you're like, well, yeah, I'll do that extra paraffin dip. That sounds great. So, and it's also telling them, if they say no, no big deal.
Yeah.
Okay, great. We'll see you for your haircut on Tuesday at 12 o'clock with Danny. Great. Have a good day. And there on you go. No harm, no foul. But they won't say yes unless you ask.
Yeah. Because you do quarterly reviews with the team. So then at those points, are you able to identify and go back to them and say like, hey, remember the conversation? Remember how you started talking about X, Y, or Z, or how to implement add-on services into these things, and you increased your add-ons, or you've increased your average ticket, or you've seen X amount of more guests, or your retention is this % higher. Like, are you able to identify those things with people when you're meeting with them?
Absolutely. I'm a big fan of, my favorite part of Rosy is the reporting system. I mean, okay, yeah, the scheduling's great for the stylists, but I like the reporting system because I can go in there and dig around, and I will certainly run these reports, and I'll run it right in front of them so that they can see the number of services. Now, if there's something I want to highlight, I may have already dug it out and written it down, but typically speaking, I will have that report and run it for them and show them exactly how much it has increased. Or maybe there's an area that they said they already wanted to focus on, and those numbers aren't necessarily growing where they would like them to be. I'll say, are you happy with this number? Okay. Do you have any ideas on how to get there? Oh, and then I always try and have one or two ideas to help them along. But yeah, absolutely. I dig through those reports on nobody's business.
That question, are you happy with this number? I love that, because it's not about, are you happy with their number? It's, are they happy with that number? Yeah. Which could be a different answer than, like, maybe they are happy with it, and then it's a different, situation and how to address where you want to see their growth, right? But it's putting the results on them and the actions, steps to them, and holding them accountable to it. Because if they want to see something grow or change, because sometimes these things are so little, like these little things that you're mentioning, they're such small steps in somebody's day that what's easy to do is easy not to do also, right? So if they skip all of those things, then status quo, and they keep at wherever they're at, maybe they even decrease a little bit, or they don't see as many guests, and now their revenue's down a little bit. But if they do some of these little small things, the number of clients that they're seeing are up, or their service ticket is up, or maybe they sold more retail, and those little things add on. So at the end of a quarter, which is 3 whole months, they've seen an amount of change. For sure. And to be honest, Lori, sometimes just having them aware of it. I may not even have to ask them to improve on a number, or I may not even have to coach them. Just seeing the number and having the awareness around it, sometimes that in and of itself will motivate them, which I love. Yeah, because it's hard for them to see a big picture when you're showing them numbers, right? When you're showing them numbers, reports, graphs, whatever, it's kind of like wash. But if you can build and create the scenario or the situation story, whatever for them and the result and how it benefits them, it's definitely going to hit home.
Well, I'll use, I'll compare them to other stylists in our salon or that Kim report. So across, the average service ticket is $101. Your average service ticket, just so that you're aware, is at 72.
Yeah.
You know,
And leaving it at that, like, what's your opportunity, right? And letting them have that time.
Yeah. What are some ideas? Yeah, what are some ideas to get that number up? Do you have any ideas? What ideas do you have? That's what you say, not do you.
Yeah. Okay, what type of ideas, suggestions, feedback, thoughts, whatever, would you have for other salon owners who maybe are not, because you coming from a financial background is a huge benefit for you, right? Like those things are ingrained in your brain. Like a lot of salon owners didn't come that way. We came from behind the chair, or they bought the salon from somebody that they were working for. What sort of advice would you have for people to maybe put some of these things in the forefront of their mind and to pay attention to how they can change their business by looking at their reports or their numbers or metrics?
So I think it just goes back to what we just said about coaching. If you don't know your numbers, how do you know where you're going? So I'll give you a crazy example. I'm almost embarrassed to admit it, but I had put one of my bills on auto pay, my electric bill, and my card expired, and I didn't realize it. So it wasn't front of mind. It wasn't showing, I wasn't getting it every month. I wasn't having to click on and pay it. And guess what happened? I got a shut-off notice. I was mortified. I mean, not only did I retire from the utility company, but I had a shut-off notice. Like that could have impacted so many people. But what happened is I put it on auto pay and I wasn't seeing it. So I wasn't keeping up with it. So I think just if you don't know them, if you don't know what your numbers are, it's not the end of the world. Just start looking into them. Just start asking the question. Vish is really, really good about showing you how much you use in color. Rosy is good with these reports. And I get so much help from the team at Rosy. In fact, poor Gary, he probably cringes every time I call because I always have a crazy report that I want run that I can't quite figure out how to do. And, he'll say to me, what are you trying to do? Tell me what you're trying to do. And of course it's some off the wall, I'm trying to measure how much shampoo they use in the back bar, when the hair's long, when the hair's short, something crazy. But if you don't know, if you don't ask the question, you can really end up in trouble. And the example I use is that damn electric bill. I mean, I wasn't asking the question. I wasn't looking at it. I didn't know what it was. And I darn near got my electric shut off. So I think just knowing, and the few basic ones are really easy to figure out and the reports are really easy to run. And even if you just look at them or have them written down for a couple of months and you don't do anything about them, you just have them. I think it's a good start. You don't have to dig in. You just got to start collecting the data.
Don't put it on auto pay.
And don't put it on auto pay.
But because you're looking at it and keeping it at forefront also, yeah. I think that's a really good example. And, somebody created and said, you manage what you measure, right? So like if you're looking at these things and you're measuring month over month over month, you start to identify some patterns and you can identify opportunities and areas that you're excelling in and where you're doing really great, because as much as you want to coach to growth opportunities, you also want to celebrate a lot of the successes and the things that you're doing really well at, and showcase that to your team where people are doing really great.
Well, exactly. And I think also, if you see a big change that you haven't seen in a while, it'll make you wonder what's going on,
Yeah.
Are we leaving the hot water running all night? Why, little things, if you mark them down, even if your numbers aren't great, but if you at least know that they're within a certain range, that you're good. And if they go out of that range, then you got to dig in and figure out what's going on.
Yeah. Okay, I got a couple questions here. Joe, who asked, can we walk through how to get those reports again sometime during the presentation? So actually, everybody can, if you go to thekimreport.com, you can sign up to receive these reports as a salon owner, and you could get them, and they do update every single month. But we will get a recap of this recording too, so you'll be able to see the 5 that we did show on here. And then another question is so Cindi, this is for you, what would you have done differently as a new owner?
Oh gosh, the list is a mile long. I probably would have dug into the numbers sooner and sat on them a little longer. I don't think 6 months was enough time. So I think, and I took over from an owner who had owned for 30 years. So she's really good friends. So I think I probably would have sat on them a little longer and introduced change a little more slowly. I mean, people don't really like change. And even if you can see the glaring good in it, I think I probably would have gone a little slower. That's probably the biggest thing.
Good advice. Okay. Do we have one more? No, I think that was it. That's all of our questions. Perfect.
Okay.
Well, Cindi, I appreciate you jumping on here and sharing your story with everybody and your experience that you've had. And now that we were able to see metrics, I think for any good or bad, I think for everybody to have access to this type of information now, because it's new for all salons to be able to see benchmarks across the board of how performance is going and how people are doing up or down. And I think that it's going to make an impact in our industry across the board of being able to measure our salon successes. So I appreciate you diving into yours and seeing where you're excelling and how things are going. We have one question. What is this? Can we see the reports again? Oh, let me share my screen. Yeah. Gosh, somebody wants to see the report again. One last time before we jump up, I'll share it up here, and then if anybody wants to take a screenshot, you may. Sorry, it's taking me a second because I gotta pull it up here. All right, so these are the metrics that we went over. The top 2 are from yesterday and 3 from today. So average revenue, the average products sold in the salon for the month of February. All of these numbers that we're looking at are for February. Average number of clients, number of color services, and the average service ticket. So I think even, especially with average service ticket, Cindi, this is really something that you just said too, is being able to take this number, say this is the average service ticket, and individually, so not just measuring the salon as an entirety, but individually, what is each provider's average service ticket, I think is impactful as well.
Well, and I think too, giving them a way to get that number up, giving them a couple of suggestions, you know, if you add on one conditioning service or, talk about face frame highlights the next time, you'll kill that number the next time the client comes in.
I think one thing, another thing that you and I were talking about as well, we're starting to see some of these really high ticket services reduce a little bit. There's not quite as many extensions. There's not quite as many smoothing treatments. There's not quite as many, whatever lashes and things that are happening. People are starting to cut back just a little bit on that right now. But something that you're doing successfully is what we talked about, is getting people in for one more service or getting people in for a toner in between. So their initial service, their color, whatnot, that ticket might not be as high, but you're getting them in again, which is still bringing in revenue and still bringing them into the salon in between their services. So I think that that's a really huge takeaway for people, is how to get people back in the salon more frequently.
Right. Agreed.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing. Again, everybody will be able to get this recording out, which will have these on there, so you'll be able to grab those as well. Or you can go to thekimreport.com and you can sign up for the report yourself, and you can get it every single month and see where you stand. So Cindi, thank you so much for being a part of this and sharing all of these things. Cindi will be at Data Driven also with us at the end of April. So if you are going and want to talk to Cindi more, you can find her there also. So thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Everybody have a wonderful day. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.